Hello ladies and gentlemen, Meoni here of AceGamesTV with another Tera video for you. So anyone interested into the Endgame of Tera Online, look no further, I have some footage for you. So recently they decided to do some testing, actual Endgame testing for the raid system, which is called the Nexus system, which is essentially like world PvE, big world bosses. And I was lucky enough to be online for this. Now, many people will be asking, why on earth did they decide to test this raid system on, the actual live server? And to be honest, I really don't have an answer for that. It's a bit weird, really. They didn't test any of this on the beta, and in my opinion, I think the game was rushed out with no real endgame, and certainly no endgame testing, which is certainly something I'm a bit confused at. They didn't even put up a PTR system or like a closed testing server for the endgame. They just decided to test it on the live servers. And this has resulted in some massive problems, and I mean massive problems in that the servers have been so unstable, they've been going down, the maintenance has been horrible. It's been an absolute nightmare, and that's all thanks to Frogster. So let's talk about the actual endgame content which I'm showing you. This is indeed the Nexus footage I managed to record. Basically what happens, there are 3 stages of an encounter per Nexus. A Nexus is basically a giant rift. I was going to try and avoid that terminology, but if you think about rifts from the game Rift, it's essentially a copycat, exactly the same. These Nexus open in the sky above the Canavar front and Argonia, those 2 zones, and there are about 6 per zone, something like that. And once one is opened, you have 3 stages of completion of that particular Nexus. The first stage is a few tiny little minions which you can kill really easily. The second stage is usually 2 or 3 creatures, which is slightly more powerful. And the third stage is a giant boss. It can be a boss from any different type of archetype. You can have like a giant Kumas type mob, which is a huge belly bouncer thing. You may have seen them, big fat things. Or you can have a dragon. In this case, we're going to see a dragon in a few moments. And also you can have the giant like Colossus guys. So there is some variety there, but my real problem with this stems from not only this being quite an unoriginal prospect, but the actual difficulty that they've decided to implement. Now obviously this is testing, and I would be a little bit more lenient on it being just a test. This isn't final, and this is not released. By no means is this available every day. This is currently disabled in current Tera. You can only access this on the certain tests, and this was one of the occasions where I got to actually try it out. Unfortunately, this is not on a private server or anything, so obviously my leniency goes out of the window, considering this is accessible by the paying public who are actually playing the normal game. So here's my review of what's wrong and what's actually right with this system. So let's try and be as positive as possible in this segment, considering the large amount of negativity that I am feeling for the overall design and implementation of this Nexus system. So firstly, you have to look at the structure of the Nexus system on paper. It's a series of 3-tiered encounters set within 2 zones, with an entire server involved in the process. This sounds great, considering lore-wise the Canavar front, where we are right now in the video, and the plain of Argonia are supposedly full of hordes of monsters, absolutely full. This is depicted in the cutscenes, and the reality of that is actually far from hoarded. I would hope that the Nexus system would address that somewhat, and in many ways I found it actually did, quite a lot, but poorly. So you're a random player in a guild and you approach a Nexus. You are automatically put into a group with random people at the Nexus location. Any random 5 people. Not a raid group, a 5-man group. There are hundreds of other 5-man groups around you, formed in exactly the same manner, with currently there being no way of group queuing for them with your friends. Now, I have to mention how this works. The encounters scale off the amount of players fighting them. So in this case we had an entire server fighting the bosses, and as such it was slightly more engaging in difficulty, and dependent on the random group setup of your 5-man was given. Thankfully I was given a healer in my group, but I know several other players who were not given that, and were given 4 DPS and a tank, which is not exactly ideal, considering the AoE damage scaling. and basically killing you and causing you to corpse run endlessly. Even though directional healing was a thing that was happening all around you, not being able to see people's life bars outside of a group led to many deaths. Many deaths. The scaling system works fine up until the final encounter. In this case, a dragon spawned and essentially scaled it to the point that it was virtually unkillable. We tried for nearly the entire time duration of the Nexus uptime for the entire event and decided to abandon it in favour of one of the other Nexuses. They were less populated. Now, other people also decided to do exactly the same thing, and as such, each Nexus was scaled up in turn. This was fine, but even then they took a ridiculous amount of time to down, considering the lack of coordination and these random group setups with poor composition. Aside from a couple of pathetic resets of the boss HP, I think basically because the tank managed to somehow kite the monster slightly too far out of the circle you had to fight him in, apparently, we did actually down one Nexus in the end as the time ran out. Now, the reward was reputation and I think a couple of tokens or something, some currency, which I understand is currency which you need to buy many of the best in-game gear items. Now, I don't really have to explain the issues I had with this system, but it's safe to say it does have issues. What I do have to question is the following. Why would you implement a fixed time of when these Nexus are up during the day, with 3 hours odd in between, when this is your only endgame raiding, essentially, and other games such as World of Warcraft are successful raiding-wise because of people being able to arrange their game time around their real lives, and not the other way around. Another question is, why is there no raid group system or a way of queuing with it for friends? It's unproductive to have to be with a random, unbalanced group you cannot arrange, and promotes anonymity in a supposedly server-based community encounter. And why is the reward system so blatantly low for this? Why do you get reputation for the first 2 tiers of the encounter, and then a couple of tokens currency rewards for the latter, when the requirement is so high? Surely awarding this to all of the tiers of this encounter would be better and more productive. There's not going to be anybody apart from the people who can make every single one of these encounters with the gear in the game. I mean, that's really counterproductive. All of these things certainly result in negativity from me, and certainly don't serve as any incentive to any player to even bother with the system, or let alone enjoy any of it, because fighting a dragon when I'm supposed to do other things, arranging my life around a game's raid system, are totally going to work, aren't they? If you think I'm speaking from a casual gamer and just a whiner, I've raided heroics and harder difficulties in MMOs for 6 years nearly, and find this system highly counterintuitive. Despite the obvious problems and breakages, I have one very simple problem, which gives me even more doubt over Frogster as a publisher. Raid testing on a live server is retarded. It has caused the service to break, have maintenance nearly every day, and is a horrible idea. Now, my message to Frogster is it that you still think you are making games for free-to-play audiences, or is it simply that you forgot that people playing this otherwise fantastic game are paying you money to fuck things up? Right, that's my impression of the endgame of Tera as it stands today. If you have liked this video, be sure to leave a like for me below, and since I have a feeling that this will probably generate some strongly hated replies, please feel free to comment below or actually leave me a video response. I look forward to hearing from you either way. Just remember, I do actually enjoy this game and have enjoyed it thoroughly. You would not believe how much I have enjoyed this, especially the combat system and the lore and the actual gameplay. It's brilliant. As this video simply serves to show what I feel as a paying subscriber to a game that I enjoy, and I hate to see this from a publisher who obviously does not care for their customers, and I want to make this obvious and try and get some feedback. Be sure to hit that subscribe button above, and I will see you next time for more Tera and other great stuff. Ciao!